Let me ask you something you might not have paused long enough to consider. What if the most important performance tool you'll ever own is a supplement or a wearable or a piece of tech, but your own awareness? What if your body has been trying to talk to you for years, but no one ever taught you how to listen? We live in a culture that worships optimization. Faster, harder, stronger. We want hacks. We want results. We want to squeeze the most out of our bodies, our time, our lives. But beneath the surface, something's fraying. You know it. I know it. We're moving through our days like machines, but machines with warning lights flashing on the inside. Headaches that show up for no reason. Anxiety that creeps in even when life looks fine. Chronic stiffness. Poor sleep. Brain fog. Shorter tempers. Lower energy. And yet we keep pushing. Because the world tells us, you're fine. Just grind harder. But here's the truth no one tells you. Performance isn't just about output. It's about alignment. And longevity doesn't come from more effort. It comes from more awareness. Imagine this. You're driving a high-performance car. It looks good. It's powerful. But there's a light blinking on the dash. Not a big one, just a small warning light. Something in the engine isn't right. Now you could ignore it, tape over it, push the pedal harder. But sooner or later, the engine fails. And it's not sudden. It was failing the entire time. You just couldn't feel it until it was too late. That's your body. That's your nervous system. That's your mind. Most of us were never taught how to tune in. We wait for a breakdown, a panic attack, an injury, burnout, insomnia to tell us we've gone too far. But what if you could see it coming? What if your body was already whispering every day and you just didn't have the dashboard to read it? That's where Rob Wilson's philosophy hits different. He calls it check engine light. And it's not just a catchy name. It's a call to rewire how we approach performance, health, and life. This isn't biohacking hype or another 90-day plan. It's about reclaiming ownership of the one system you've had since birth. Your body, your breath, your biology. And here's the kicker. Your nervous system. The thing that controls your mood, your stress, your recovery, your reflexes. It's not just reacting to life. It's adapting to your choices. And every breath you take, every thought you repeat, every movement you avoid is data. Data your body is using to decide, do I feel safe enough to grow or am I just surviving today? That's the real performance question. Because if you're living in survival mode, even subtly, your body will start conserving energy. Your motivation dips. Your mobility tightens. Your immune system weakens. Your sleep gets shallow. And you won't even notice until the cost compounds. But once you learn how to read your signals, the tension in your jaw, the heaviness in your chest, the tightness in your hips, the patterns in your breath, suddenly it all makes sense. You don't just feel off. You understand why. And more importantly, you know what to do about it. This video is not about giving you another rigid program. It's about handing you back your dashboard so you can stop outsourcing your health to devices or coaches or trends and start tuning into the world's most advanced feedback system, you. Rob Wilson spent decades in breath work, neuroscience, elite coaching, and he condensed years of wisdom into a single radical idea. You don't get stronger by doing more. You get stronger by noticing more. What does that mean? It means your stress isn't the enemy, but your blindness to it is. It means your recovery doesn't start when you sleep. It starts when you learn to regulate your nervous system during the day. It means your longevity isn't built in gyms. It's built in daily micro-decisions, tiny recalibrations, listening, adjusting, honoring. And that's what we're about to explore. We'll dive into the 3 pillars of the check engine light framework. Mind, learning to feel your nervous system in real time. Recognizing the emotional leaks before they flood your system. Movement, rethinking fitness from output to function, reclaiming lost mobility, stability, breath mechanics. Matter, understanding your inputs, nutrition, sleep, recovery, environment, and how they quietly shape every outcome you care about. But this isn't about overwhelm. It's about clarity. You're not here to become a perfect machine. You're here to become a conscious one. And that starts not with doing more, but with feeling more. So if you ever felt like your body was speaking a language you didn't quite understand, If you've been chasing vitality, but can't seem to shake the fog, the fatigue, the friction, if you want to know how to stay powerful, mobile, sharp, and grounded, not just this month, but into your 40s, 50s, 70s, and beyond, then stay with me, because the rest of this video could become the beginning of your recalibration, the moment you stop ignoring the whispers and start driving your life with clarity, alignment, and conscious control. This is a long game. This is how performance lasts. This is your check engine light. Let's tune in. Would you like help adding sound design? Now that we've lifted the hood, now that you've met your first signal, the quiet voice within that says, hey, something needs attention. It's time to learn how to interpret that voice and what to do with it. Because awareness alone isn't enough. You need a framework, a system, not one made of rules or rigidity, but one made of reflection, recalibration, and rhythm. That's what Rob Wilson offers us. Not a set of instructions, but a philosophy of attention. You see, for too long, we've looked at health as a destination. I'll be healthy when I lose weight. I'll be strong when I can lift that much. I'll be okay when I finally get time to rest. But Check Engine Light teaches us to stop chasing finish lines and start building a dashboard of awareness so you can see the road while you're still on it, so you can course correct in motion, so you don't have to crash to grow. Think about it like this. Every day, your body gives you data. That tight hip, that sudden irritability, that 3 p.m. crash, that clunky morning walk, that forgotten name in a conversation, all of these are signals. And your job is to become fluent in them. Rob breaks his fluency into 3 key systems: mind, movement, matter. And through them, he gives us 20 life-changing lessons. But let's be clear, these aren't tips or hacks. These are skills of sensing. Each one is an invitation to listen where you once numbed, to move where you once sat still, to nourish where you once depleted, to trust where you once outsourced. And as we begin this journey, lesson by lesson, principle by principle, I want you to remember something. This is not about fixing yourself. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are simply out of tune. And like any great instrument, a violin, a piano, a drum, when the tuning is right, you don't have to force beauty. It flows. It sings. It vibrates. So consider the next 20 lessons not as tasks, but as tuning forks. Each one will resonate differently for you. Some might hit hard. Some might feel familiar. Some will challenge your identity. Some will feel like coming home. Your job isn't to master them all. Your job is to notice, to reflect, to feel what lands. Because the truth is, you already have the answers. You've just never been taught how to listen. So breathe in, center yourself, grab a journal, or just hold space within your mind, and prepare to meet 20 lessons that may just change the way you live in your body for the rest of your life. Lesson 1 begins now. Have you ever heard a tea kettle right before it whistles? There's this tiny hum, a faint vibration you almost miss. You're in the other room, doing something else, scrolling, talking, moving through your day. Then the pitch shifts. It sharpens. It grows louder. Until suddenly, it's screaming. That moment is familiar, isn't it? Not just with tea kettles, but with your body, your emotions, your energy. Something feels a little off. You ignore it. Then something else. A tight jaw, a short fuse, another night of bad sleep. You push through, and then one day you crash. You break. You burn out. And you tell yourself it was sudden. But it wasn't. It was a whisper. Long before the crash came the cue. You just didn't know how to hear it. We live in a world obsessed with performance, with squeezing out more reps, more output, more hours, more hustle. But few of us were ever taught the single most essential skill of longevity: how to notice the early signs of imbalance. Rob Wilson calls this your check engine light, the first flicker that something in your system is adapting, compensating, struggling to keep up. And here's the radical idea. Those signs are not failures. They're feedback. Your body isn't trying to punish you. It's trying to protect you. But protection starts with perception. When something's out of alignment, your system sends a signal. It might come as stiffness in the hips, tightness in the chest, a subtle loss of joy in the things you used to love, a strange new craving, or a heavy fatigue that feels too over your age. These are not random annoyances. They are language, the language of the nervous system. And the more fluent you become in that language, the less often you'll have to suffer through breakdowns. Every day, your body is adapting to stress, emotional, chemical, physical, even relational. And it adjusts subtly, tightening a muscle here, holding a breath there, redirecting blood flow, dulling your appetite. These aren't dramatic shifts. They're micro-calibrations designed to help you survive the day. But survival is expensive when it becomes your default. Your heart beats faster. Your digestion slows. Your cognition narrows. Your recovery tanks. You keep functioning, but not thriving. And what's worse, you start thinking it's normal. What was once a signal becomes your new baseline. The pain gets quiet, but that doesn't mean it's gone. It just means you've adapted to dysfunction. That's why the first real step to long-term performance, to true cellular vitality, is to stop numbing and start noticing. Start small. Start now. Just take a breath and ask, where do I feel tight? Where do I feel tired? Where do I feel off? No judgment. No fixing. Just listening. Your body is the most honest friend you have. It doesn't lie. It doesn't play games. It doesn't gaslight you. But it does require attention. Because without attention, sensation becomes oppression. And suppression becomes suffering. You might think you don't have time for a check-in. But you will make time for recovery after the breakdown, whether you choose to or not. You will be forced to stop eventually. Or you can choose to pause now. 3 minutes. That's all it takes. Find a seat. Close your eyes. Feel your breath. Scan the body, like checking your dashboard. Is the breath shallow? Are your shoulders clenched? Do you feel safe in your skin? This isn't woo-woo. This is physiology. The autonomic nervous system runs a show, and it's either leaning towards safety and growth or toward defense and shutdown. You don't get to bypass that with motivation, but you can shift it with awareness. And when you do that every day, you build something powerful, a baseline of honesty, a lived relationship with your internal world. So when the whisper comes, you hear it. You course correct early. You tune in instead of tuning out. That's how we build longevity. Not by waiting until we break, but by listening while we're still whole. So ask yourself tonight, what did I override today? What would I have done differently if I had listened? And then tomorrow, listen. This is how vitality begins. Not in the gym, not in a pill, not in a 30-day challenge, but in the space between stimulus and response, where the whisper lives. And if you can catch the whisper before it turns to a roar, you won't just perform better. You'll suffer less, and you'll start to trust the only system that's been with you since birth, yourself. Lesson 2, emotional thermostats, learning to read your internal climate. How do you know when you're emotionally cold or overheated? We check the weather forecast before we leave the house. We glance at the thermostat before we sleep. We even adjust the AC when we feel a little uncomfortable. But have you ever checked your emotional thermostat? The thing is, you have one. Your nervous system is constantly adjusting the internal climate of your life. It regulates tension, excitement, anxiety, motivation, even numbness, like temperature settings. And just like the climate in your home, when it shifts, you feel it in strange ways. Maybe you snap more easily. Maybe you withdraw from people. Maybe you crave sugar or stimulation. Maybe you lose interest in the things that once lit you up. But here's what no one told you growing up. Those aren't personality traits. They're emotional weather patterns. And if you can read them, if you can track the climate, you can stop blaming yourself for the storms and start choosing your internal forecast. Rob Wilson calls this emotional thermoregulation a crucial component of nervous system mastery. It's not just about feeling your feelings. It's about understanding what state you're in and learning how to shift it when necessary. So let's zoom in. Your emotional state is not random. It's physiological. It's biochemical. It's mechanical. Emotions live in the nervous system, and they show up through breath, posture, facial tension, voice tone, and thought loops. And that's key. Emotions don't live in your head. They live in your body. Ever notice how anxiety isn't just a thought? It's a tight chest, a rapid heart, a sense of urgency, or how sadness isn't just mental. It's heaviness of limbs, a drop in energy, a desire to curl in. These aren't stories. They're states. And your job is not to control them, but to sense them, name them, and navigate them. That's what emotional literacy is. But we've been taught to skip all of that. We suppress. We distract. We man up. We self-medicate with screens, sugar, or silence. And over time, the climate changes. We become people who live in freeze, numb, detached, exhausted. Or people who live in fire, irritated, defensive, always on edge. And eventually, we forget what calm even feels like. So today's lesson is a reclaiming. It's about becoming the meteorologist of your own nervous system, reading the weather, preparing accordingly, and knowing when to open the windows or seek shelter. Let's start with this. Your nervous system has 3 primary states. Green, calm, connected, social, focused. This is where digestion works, memory forms, healing happens. Yellow, mobilized, sympathetic, alert, reactive, driven, sometimes anxious. Red, shut down, freeze. Flat, overwhelmed, dissociated, exhausted. None of these are bad. All are necessary. But living in yellow or red too long creates emotional debt. And like any debt, it eventually collects interest. You'll pay in sleep, in inflammation, in relationships, in willpower. All because your climate never resets. So, how do you start checking your thermostat? First, pause. Midday, not just at night. Put a hand on your chest and belly. Ask, where am I on the color scale? What does my breath tell me? Am I speeding up or shutting down? You don't need a diagnosis. You need awareness. Now add layers. What's my face doing? Tense jaw? Furrowed brow? What's my tone like? Sharp, flat, fake? What emotions are present? Not the ones I should feel, but the ones that are here. Then, and this is crucial, name the state without judgment. I feel anxious. I feel checked out. I feel on edge. Not because you're failing, but because your system is adapting. And when you name it, you take the wheel back. You shift from passenger pilot. From there, you can choose a breath reset, a posture change, a grounding walk, a cold splash, a long exhale, a short hug, or even just stillness. Each of these is a dial, a way to change the temperature. And over time, you begin to trust yourself again. You stop saying, I'm just like this. You start saying, I'm just in this, and I know how to shift. Now imagine a world where you did this daily, where instead of exploding at your kids, you noticed the heat rising and stepped outside, where instead of numbing out on your phone, you sensed a freeze and chose breath, where instead of blaming yourself for inconsistency, you realize your climate wasn't right for creation. This is not self-help fluff. This is nervous system fluency. And it's the foundation of emotional mastery. Because the truth is, your emotions are not problems, they're messages. And if you learn to hear the message before the mood controls you, you don't just feel better, you become better. So tonight, before bed, check your weather. What's the climate in your body? What temperature are you running? And what would it feel like to step into green? Let that be your practice. Let that be your power. You can't control the storms of life, but you can become the kind of person who's always checking the sky. The next lesson is waiting. Let's keep tuning in. Lesson 3. Movement is memory, reclaiming your body's forgotten language. When you hear the word movement, what comes to mind? Gym reps? Yoga flows? Running shoes? A morning stretch? For most of us, movement has been flattened into exercise, something you schedule, measure, push through, something you do to burn calories, earn rest, or keep your body in shape. But what if I told you movement is far more than a task? It's memory, it's feedback, it's language, and the more fluent you become in it, the more access you gain, not just a physical strength, but a buried emotions, hidden traumas, forgotten capacities. You see, your body is not just a vehicle, it's a storyteller, and movement is the way it speaks. Every stiffness in your hips, every limited range in your shoulder, every involuntary flinch, collapse, avoidance pattern. It's not just biomechanics. It's history. It's everything your nervous system has ever learned, from how you felt as a kid, to how you adapted around stress, to the way you've coped with fear. And that's why this third lesson is critical. Reclaim your movement, and you reclaim your story. Let's unpack that. Your nervous system does not separate physical experiences from emotional ones. It remembers them the same way, through protective adaptations. So when something hurt, physically, emotionally, relationally, the system did what it's designed to do: protect. It might have tightened certain muscles, shut down movement in a joint, changed your gait, pulled your shoulders inward, or trained your breath to stay shallow, just in case. And if no one helped you release or retrain that, it became your new normal. That's not dysfunction. That's efficiency. Your body isn't broken. It's intelligent. It's just still running a survival pattern from years ago. So when we talk about mobility or flexibility or injury prevention, we're not just talking about range of motion. We're talking about nervous system permission. Because unless your brain feels safe, it will always limit expression. Try this. Stand up. Roll your shoulders. Twist side to side. Now ask, where do I feel stuck? Where does the movement stop early? Where do I feel guarded? Those are not mechanical limits. They are neural conversations. And Rob Wilson teaches that movement isn't about how much you can lift, but how well you can listen. That's why high-level athletes spend as much time in movement diagnostics as they do in training. They don't ask, am I strong? They ask, where am I compensating? Where am I over-relying? Where have I lost range, not just in joints, but in nervous system access? Because a limited movement pattern is not just local. It affects everything, from breath to posture, digestion to sleep. Let's make it real. Let's say you sit for hours a day. Your hips tighten. Your glutes go offline. Your thoracic spine stiffens. So when you stand or walk, your pelvis tilts. Your lumbar spine takes the load. Your gait narrows. That's not just posture. That's a systemic rewrite. Your breathing changes. Your rib cage becomes less dynamic. Your diaphragm gets lazy. Your nervous system assumes a state of mild bracing all day. And eventually you get random knee pain or fatigue or brain fog. But it wasn't random. It was cumulative adaptation. That's why movement, real, mindful, exploratory movement, is the missing diagnostic tool in most people's health journeys. So here's the invitation. Stop thinking of movement as something to win. Start using it to inquire. Every time you move, whether walking, crawling, hanging, flowing, you are gathering data. Where does your breath catch? Where do you hold tension unconsciously? Where do you avoid loading weight? That data is gold. It tells you where to pay attention, where to unwind, where to re-educate your nervous system. And you don't need a fancy gym to do it. Some of the most powerful movements in Rob Wilson's work are primitive, primal, build on patterns we once mastered as infants. Things like rocking on hands and knees, cross-body crawling, deep squatting, hanging from a bar, rotational lunges, rolling across the floor. These aren't just weird exercises. They're neurological resets. Because when you reintroduce the body to patterns it once knew, without force, without ego, you create safety. And from safety comes expansion. That's why Rob often emphasizes quality over intensity. Because if the system doesn't feel safe, it won't integrate. That's also why injuries often come not from the big lift, but from accumulated compensations we never noticed. A collapsed arch, a stiff T-spine, a tight psoas from years of fear-based bracing. And all that changes when you start paying attention. So here's your practice. Each day, take 10 minutes to explore nonlinear movement. No reps, no sets, just exploration. Get on the floor. Move like an animal. Roll, twist, rock, squat, crawl. Breathe through it. Ask, where am I free? Where am I stuck? And most importantly, where do I feel young again? Because movement is not just function, it's expression. And somewhere along the way, many of us traded movement for repetition. We stopped dancing. We stopped playing. We stopped exploring. but the body remembers. And every time you move with curiosity, not perfection, you light up circuits long dormant. That's how you rewire old patterns. That's how you rediscover range, physical, emotional, spiritual. So if you've been living in a body that feels stiff, foreign, disconnected, know this. You don't need to conquer your body. You need to reintroduce yourself to it, not with punishment, with play, not with shame, with sensation, not with protocols, with presence. Your body has been waiting, not for performance, but for permission. Permission to move, to flow, to feel again. Because beneath the stiffness, beneath the guarding, beneath the limits, there is still a body that knows how to express freedom. And that freedom begins with a single movement, not to look good, not to check a box, but to say, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm ready to remember who I am. Let's move into the next lesson and keep this dance going. Lesson 4, breathe to believe, reclaiming the remote control to your nervous system. If you had a remote control that could change your emotional state, calm your heart rate, sharpen your focus, reset your energy, and bring you out of panic or fatigue, would you use it? You already have one. It's not an app, not a supplement, not a therapy. It's your breath. And yet, most people live their whole lives barely aware of it. We breathe 20,000 times a day, and most of those breaths are unconscious, shallow, mechanical. But what if I told you how you breathe shapes not just your physiology, but your psychology? That breath, that quiet, rhythmic action that's been with you since the first moment you entered this world, is your nervous system's control dial. This is lesson 4, and it may be the most important tool you've never been taught to master. Let's start with a truth that might surprise you. You don't breathe to oxygenate. You breathe to regulate. Oxygen is important, yes, but breath's deeper function is to maintain homeostasis across all systems, nervous, muscular, hormonal, even immune. When your breath is chaotic, shallow, rushed, your body interprets that as a sign of threat. When your breath is deep, slow, rhythmical, your body interprets that as a signal of safety. That's because the autonomic nervous system, the part of you that runs heartbeat, digestion, stress hormones, is wired into your breath through the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is like your internal thermostat for stress. So when you shift your breath, you shift your state. Let me say that again. When you shift your breath, you shift your state. It sounds simple, but it's profound. Because most people try to change their mind with more thinking. They try to fix stress with willpower. They try to calm down through logic. But the mind doesn't calm the body. The body calms the mind. And breath is the fastest route. Think of it this way. Your breath is the bridge between conscious and unconscious. It's the only autonomic function you can voluntarily control. And by controlling it, you speak the body's language. You tell your system, you're safe. You have time. You can rest. You can heal. And when your system believes that, everything changes. Let's make it real. When you inhale, you stimulate the sympathetic branch, alertness, readiness, activation. When you exhale, you stimulate the parasympathetic branch, calm, rest, digestion, repair. So just by extending your exhale, you tip the balance toward calm. Now stack that across time. Daily short breathing rituals. 5 minutes here, 3 minutes there. Teach your nervous system a new baseline, one that doesn't default to fight or flight. Because here's what most people don't realize. If you don't train your breath gets trained by your stress. And that's dangerous, because chronic stress teaches the body to breathe through the upper chest, to take shallow sips of air, to hold the breath in tension. And those patterns become your default, even when you're resting. And then we wonder why we feel anxious, tired, foggy, inflamed. It's not just the external stressors. It's how your breath encoded those stressors into your system. That's why Rob Wilson calls breath the reset button most people never press. It's not about fancy techniques or spiritual fluff. It's about taking mechanical control over a system most of us abandon. And when you reclaim it, you get access to yourself again. Let's get tactical. Here are 3 breath tools you can use today to shift your state. 1, the physiological sigh. 2 quick inhales through the nose. 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. It's proven to rapidly drop cortisol and return the system to baseline. 2 box breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. This square rhythm stabilizes focus, heart rate, and vagal tone. 3 resonant breathing. Breathe in for 5 to 6 seconds. Breathe out for 5 to 6 seconds. Repeat for 3 to 5 minutes. This entrains heart rate variability and sets the stage for emotional regulation. Now, the key isn't just doing these once. It's consistency, like brushing your teeth. You don't wait until your mouth is disgusting. You do it every day to prevent problems. Breath is the same. It's nervous system hygiene. Use it proactively. In the morning, between meetings, before meals, before sleep. You don't need 30 minutes of meditation. You need 2 minutes of connection. And over time, you'll feel it. The moments that used to trigger you, you'll meet them with space. The fatigue that used to hit midday, it'll lift. The anxiety that buzzed in the background, it'll quiet. And it won't be because you tried harder. It'll be because you built a new baseline. Because breath is the only practice that meets you wherever you are. Stressed? Breathe. Sad? Breathe. Angry? Breathe. Scattered? Breathe. In pain? Breathe. Not to fix it, but to be with it in a state of safety. That safety becomes your anchor. And here's the final gift. When you train your breath, you don't just heal your body. You start to trust yourself again. Because when you can calm yourself from the inside, when you can navigate intensity with ease, when you can shift your own state in real time, you stop fearing your emotions. You stop reacting to stress. You stop outsourcing your peace. And you start living from a place of grounded presence. That is freedom. That is mastery. That is the gift your breath has been holding every day while you weren't looking. So take a moment now. Close your eyes. Inhale slowly. Hold. Exhale longer than you think you need to. Feel your shoulders soften. Feel your jaw relax. Feel the moment arrive. You're here. You're safe. You're home. And the breath brought you back. Let's keep going. Lesson 5. Capacity over intensity. Listening to the limits that keep you free. If you've ever pushed yourself to the point of exhaustion, if you ever ignored the signs, powered through, and paid for it later with burnout, injury, or collapse, then this lesson is for you. Because we live in a world that confuses effort with capacity. We're told to go harder, faster, longer. We're praised for how much we do, how much we tolerate, how much we grind. But Rob Wilson teaches something radical. Longevity isn't built on intensity. It's built on your ability to listen to capacity. Let that sink in, because capacity isn't how much you want to do. It's how much your system can actually handle without breaking. And that's the big difference. Anyone can push hard for a season, but sustainable performance, the kind that lasts for decades, is about living within your body's adaptive bandwidth. That's what capacity is. It's the invisible line between stimulation and stress, between challenge and chaos, between effort and erosion. So let's define it clearly. Capacity is how much load your system can carry, physically, emotionally, mentally, without tipping into dysregulation. It's your threshold for training without injury, stress without shutdown, engagement without fatigue, performance without burnout. And here's the thing. Capacity is not fixed. It's dynamic. It changes every day based on sleep, nutrition, emotional stress, inflammation, even sunlight exposure. Which means, if you're using the same plan every day without checking in, you're probably overdrawing the account. So the real question becomes, are you listening to your capacity, or are you ignoring it because you think you should be able to handle more? Let's go deeper. Your body gives you signs when you're nearing your threshold. Movement becomes tight or awkward. Breath shortens. Coordination drops. Focus narrows. Emotions spike. Recovery lags. Sleep fragments. Cravings rise. Motivation dips. These are not random fluctuations. They're dashboard warnings. They're your internal system saying, hey, we're not broken. but we're not ready for more. And ignoring them, just because a program says you should hit that rep, that speed, that weight, is like ignoring a flashing fuel light on a road trip. You might get a few more miles, but you'll pay for it with interest. Now, this doesn't mean avoiding discomfort. It means learning the difference between productive discomfort and damaging override. And that difference is felt in recovery. Did the workout leave you stronger? Or did it take 3 days to feel human again? Did the meeting energize you, or are you still tense hours later? Did that push build capacity or borrow from tomorrow? Rob teaches that true resilience is built when you stress the system within its capacity and then recover intentionally. That's how adaptations happen. Not from destroying yourself, but from flirting with the edge, then backing off so your system can recalibrate. This is the secret of elite performers. They don't just go hard. They cycle intelligently. They train based on how their system feels, not just how it's supposed to perform. So, how do you build that level of sensitivity? You start with a simple tool, a capacity dashboard. Each morning, before you train, grind, push, ask yourself 5 questions. How did I sleep last night? Quality, not just hours. How's my energy this morning? Vibrant, flat, wired? How's my mood? Tense, neutral, optimistic, irritable? Any tightness, soreness, aches, especially in usual hot spots? How's my breath? Deep and full or shallow and chesty? Score each on a 1 to 5 scale. Then add it up. That number is your readiness score. Low score? Prioritize recovery, mobility, gentle work. High score? You got bandwidth, lean in, train hard. Middle score? Stay adaptive. Push or pull depending on feel. This is what it means to live in dialogue with your capacity. You're not being lazy. You're being wise. Because here's the paradox. The people who learn to back off when needed are the ones who stay in the game longest. They don't miss seasons from injury. They don't lose months to burnout. They adapt, evolve, and keep showing up because they listen before the breakdown. So, if you've been living in a constant state of overreach, if your body feels like it's always playing catch-up, if rest feels guilty, if you feel worse after working on yourself, then this is your permission slip. You don't have to prove your worth through pain. You're allowed to ask, what's my capacity today? What supports my growth without stealing from tomorrow? What would it look like to lead with sensitivity, not just intensity? This mindset shift changes everything. You start building not just strength, but self-trust. You stop fearing rest and start honoring it. You stop chasing progress and start creating the conditions for it to unfold naturally. Because when your system feels supported, it stops bracing. It stops fighting. It opens up to growth. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. So today, take a moment. Pause. Breathe. Check your readiness. Check your dashboard. And choose your next action, not from guilt, but from grounded self-awareness. That's the path to true longevity. That's how you build a body and a mind that won't betray you. Because when you stay under your threshold long enough to expand it, you grow strong on your own terms. Let's keep tuning in. Lesson 6. Plug the leaks, reclaiming energy loss of unfelt emotions. You wake up already tired, not because you didn't sleep, not because you overtrained, but because something deeper is draining you. Quietly, constantly, you go through the day on edge. A little snappier than usual, a little more sensitive. The email pings it different. The noise feels louder. The pressure of the ordinary feels heavier than it should. You tell yourself it's just stress, or being busy, or needing a break. But what if the real drain isn't your schedule? What if it's the emotional load you haven't named yet? This is the core of Lesson 6, one of Rob Wilson's most powerful teachings. You're not burned out because of what you're doing. You're burned out because of what you're carrying. And the truth is, most of us are carrying more than we realize. Unprocessed frustration, lingering resentment, chronic self-doubt, fear that never had language, grief that never got ritual, anxiety that we normalized. And because no one taught us how to feel it safely, we didn't. We stored it, tucked it into our tissues, trained our breath to hold it, trained our muscles to clench it, trained our nervous system to work around it. And here's what's wild. Your body is spending energy every day, not to fix a problem, but to suppress the signal. That's emotional leakage. It's like leaving the lights on in 100 rooms of your nervous system. Little flickers of tension, tiny stressors with nowhere to go, 1,000 microholds in the muscles, joints, breath, and brain, all silently taxing your energy. And unless you plug the leaks, no amount of recovery will feel like enough. So what do? You start by admitting this truth. Feeling is not weakness. It's waste removal. Emotions are not personal flaws. They're chemical signals. And if you suppress them, you don't eliminate the charge. You just change where it hides. Anger becomes jaw tension. Sadness becomes back pain. Fear becomes shallow breath. Shame becomes collapsed posture. And over time, those emotional patterns calcify into identity. We start saying, I'm just anxious. I'm just stiff. I'm just bad at relationships. No, you're just unprocessed. And your system has been adapting to survive. But we're not here to survive. We're here to feel fully, function cleanly, and free up all the energy that's been spent keeping the vault locked. So how do we begin? Step 1. Stop intellectualizing. Feelings aren't puzzles to solve. They're weather patterns to observe. You don't fix the rain. You let it fall. You find shelter. You breathe through it. So instead of asking, why do I feel this way? Ask, where do I feel this in my body? What's the temperature? The texture? The movement? What does this part of me need? Not to go away, but to be acknowledged. Step 2. Reclaim somatic rituals. The body needs motion to metabolize emotion. Anger might want to shake. Grief might want to wail. Anxiety might need breath plus grounding. Shame might need safe eye contact and exhale. Numbness might need rhythm, tapping, cold. The point isn't to perform the emotion. It's to let the energy run its cycle. Because all emotions have a shelf life if we let them move. But we've been taught to analyze, rationalize, or distract, which keeps us in emotional constipation. Step 3. Create daily emotional hygiene, just like brushing your teeth. Make time each day to check your internal weather. Sit quietly. Ask, what am I carrying that I haven't named? What am I avoiding feeling today? What sensation am I trying to override? Journal it. Breathe through it. Move with it. Not to wallow, but to discharge. And over time, the leaks stop draining you. You sleep better. You move freer. You speak cleaner. You feel lighter, not because you healed everything, but because you stopped storing everything. That's emotional freedom. Not constant joy, but constant access to what's real. Because when you plug the leaks, you gain back the psychic bandwidth to be present. You stop snapping because you're no longer under pressure. You stop people-pleasing because your nervous system no longer fears rejection. You stop grinding for worth because you're no longer avoiding shame. And all that energy you used to spend managing, you now use for creating. That's the shift Rob Wilson teaches. Stop managing symptoms. Start metabolizing signals. And when you do that, even just 5 minutes a day, you begin to live from wholeness, not compensation. So today, ask yourself, what part of me hasn't been heard? What emotion has overstayed its welcome? What tension am I mislabeling as normal? Then breathe, move, feel, not because you're broken, but because you're finally safe enough to release the weight you were never meant to carry alone. This is how we plug the leaks. This is how we reclaim nervous system clarity. This is how we stop surviving and start living. The next lesson is waiting. Let's go deeper. Lesson 7. Rhythm before rigor. Living in alignment with your energy cycles. Imagine waking up in the morning and not having to fight yourself. No dragging your feet. No slamming caffeine. No wrestling your nervous system into motivation. Just a quiet sense of rhythm. Of knowing what kind of day it is, high output or deep rest. Of trusting your body when it says slow down and listening when it says let's go. Of riding the waves, not resisting them. Now let me ask you this. When was the last time you moved through a day in sync with your own energy? For most of us, it's been a while. Because we've been trained to live on clocks, not on cycles. We wake at the same hour. work at the same pace, expect the same productivity every day, no matter what our body says. And when our energy doesn't match our calendar, we shame it. We override. We push. We crash. That's not discipline. That's dysregulation. And Rob Wilson offers a powerful alternative. Before you chase rigor, learn to feel your rhythm. This is lesson 7, and it's about aligning your biology with your behavior. Because when you do, you no longer need to force productivity. It arises naturally, cyclically, sustainably. Let's zoom out. Your nervous system is not a machine. It's a living system of waves, cycles, pulses, sleep and wake, stress and release, focus and diffusion, hunger and satiety, effort and recovery. These are natural oscillations, not malfunctions. But the modern world flattens them. We use screens to flatten circadian rhythms, caffeine to flatten energy dips, constant urgency to flatten hormonal flow. And eventually, we lose the ability to feel what phase we're in. Instead of riding the rhythm, we chase stimulation. That's not living, that's surviving. So what does rhythm actually feel like? Let's break it down into 3 levels. 1. Daily circadian rhythm. Your body moves through peaks and valleys over 24 hours. You typically have a morning activation window, 1 to 3 hours after waking. A midday dip, natural for reflection, digestion, or movement. An afternoon rebound, good for focused tasks or training. An evening wind down, best for soft light, stillness, and closure. Now ask yourself, do your habits support these waves or fight them? Do you take advantage of your peak window or waste it on low-value tasks? Do you allow the midday dip or treat it like failure? Do you honor the evening fade or try to power through it with screens? This is where rhythm begins, by noticing your daily flow. 2. Ultradian cycles, 90 to 120 minutes. Throughout the day, your system moves through smaller cycles, waves of alertness and fatigue. These govern your ability to focus, engage, recover, and shift tasks. Try working in 90-minute sprints, then pausing for 10 to 20 minutes. Don't scroll, breathe, walk, reset. This trains your nervous system to pulse, not plateau. You'll recover faster. You'll sustain energy longer. You'll feel less fried at the end of the day, even if you did more. 3. Macro cycles, weeks, months. Some days you're ready to build. Others you need to digest. Some weeks are creative. Others are maintenance. Your system is not linear. It's seasonal. And if you ignore the off weeks, force energy you don't have, you'll pay for it later in illness, injury, or apathy. But if you work with the waves, you get more done with less stress. Rob teaches this through the lens of wave awareness. Not every day is for PRs. Not every week is for growth. Sometimes the work is to recover well, so your next peak is even higher. So, how do you build rhythm awareness? You build a daily check-in ritual, a 2-minute scan to ask, where's my energy today, 1 to 10? What phase of my cycle am I in? Build, sustain, recover? What's the right kind of effort for today? High intensity, flow, or restoration? Then, and here's the hard part, trust the answer. Don't override it because you feel guilty. Don't fight it because the world told you productivity is a moral issue. Don't ignore it because the old version of you pushed harder. You're not here to hustle yourself into depletion. You're here to create long-game power, and rhythm is the key. Because when you learn to pulse, not grind, you open up to a life of clarity, energy, and presence. The goal isn't to avoid hard work. The goal is to work when you're most biologically primed for it, and rest deeply, unapologetically, when you're not. So today, do a rhythm audit. How did you start your morning? What was your best hour of focus? When did your energy dip? And what did you do with that signal? How did your evening unfold? With tension or with landing? The answers don't have to be perfect. They just have to be honest. Because honesty creates rhythm. And rhythm creates energy. And energy, aligned, sustainable energy, is the real flex. So here's your permission. You don't have to be on all the time. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to fear softness. You just have to tune into the pulse. and trust that your nervous system is wiser than your schedule. That's rhythm. That's intelligence. That's how we go the distance. Lesson 8. Environment is energy. Architecting a space that regulates you. Take a moment. Look around the space you're in right now. The walls, the lighting, the noise, the objects on your desk, the state of your kitchen, the layout of your bed, your living room, your phone screen. Now ask yourself, does this environment restore me? Or does it drain me? Quietly, constantly, invisibly? We often think of stress as something inside of us. Tension, worry, fatigue, irritability. But the truth is, your external environment plays a massive role in shaping your internal state. And in this lesson, we're going to expose one of the biggest blind spots in nervous system health. You cannot outbreathe, outthink, or outtrain a space that's constantly dysregulating you. This is Lesson 8, and it's a wake-up call to the power of context. Let's unpack that. Your nervous system is always scanning the world around you, even when you're not conscious of it. This scan is known as neuroception, and it happens below awareness. Every light bulb, every sound, every cluttered corner, every color, smell, movement, temperature shift. All of it sends signals. And those signals get interpreted as either safety or threat. So when you walk into a room that's loud, cluttered, chaotic, poorly lit, your body doesn't just observe it. It reacts to it. Tension rises. Focus narrows. Breath shortens. Stress hormones tick up. You don't even notice until you leave that room and suddenly feel better. Sound familiar? Maybe your bad mood isn't just you. Maybe your lack of focus isn't a flaw. Maybe your environment is taxing your nervous system in 1,000 subtle ways. Rob Wilson teaches that one of the most overlooked aspects of performance and longevity is environmental coherence. In other words, do the spaces you live and work in support the state you want to feel? That's a question we rarely ask, but it changes everything. Let's make this concrete. 1. Visual coherence. When a room is visually chaotic, with clutter, bright lights, messy piles, your brain has to process more data. That increases cognitive load, which decreases emotional resilience. Ever notice how you feel more overwhelmed in a messy room and more creative in a minimal one? That's not preference. That's neural bandwidth. Start small. Clear one surface, your desk, your nightstand. Add plants or natural textures, wood, stone, cotton. Reduce harsh overhead lighting. Add warm, indirect sources. These tweaks aren't aesthetic. They're regulatory. 2. Auditory hygiene. Sound shapes your state. Constant background noise, TVs, traffic, notifications, keeps your system slightly on edge. Instead, use soundscapes that match your intention. Lo-fi for work, silence for reflection, soft tones for evening. Eliminate unnecessary alerts. Create a sound boundary around deep work hours. Remember, your ears feed your vagus nerve. What you hear, you feel. 3. Movement-friendly spaces. Design your room to invite micro-movement. Place a yoga mat where you can see it. Leave a kettlebell or mace near your reading chair. Add a floor cushion to encourage grounded posture. Keep the foam roller or lacrosse ball in reach, not in the closet. This isn't about guilt. It's about affordance, making a healthy thing the easy thing. Your brain responds to what it sees most often. So if you want movement to feel natural, your space needs to speak the language of mobility. 4. Digital ecosystem. Your digital environment is just as real as your physical one. How many tabs are open? How many notifications pull your attention? What does your home screen make you feel? Rob suggests you treat your phone like a training tool, not a dopamine dispenser. Keep your main screen minimal. Use grayscale to dampen emotional triggers. Schedule scroll windows, then lock your apps. Make your lock screen a reminder of your nervous system state. Technology isn't the enemy, but unconscious consumption is. Your device can be a recovery tool or a dysregulation machine. It depends how you design it. 5. Sleep sanctuaries. Sleep is the foundation of recovery. And yet, many people sleep in rooms that feel more like war zones than sanctuaries. Is your room dark enough? Is it cold enough? Do you have blue light 1 hour before bed? Is your mattress old? Clutter beneath your bed? Laundry in the corner? You wouldn't meditate in a dirty garage. So why try to rest in a space that screams unfinished business? Make your bedroom sacred. Dim, cool, clean, minimal. No screens or strict bedtime tech cutoff. Scents, textures, sound that cue safety. You're not just optimizing sleep. You're training your system to recognize when it's safe to let go. Because sleep isn't a switch. It's a trust fall. And your environment teaches your system whether or not to trust. So let's zoom out. Your environment can either be a container that holds your nervous system in safety, or a constant signal that you're not allowed to relax. The difference isn't expensive. It's intentional. You don't need fancy gadgets. You need spaces that match your values, that support stillness, that invite movement, that reduce noise, that restore clarity. This is what Rob means by building a nervous system respectful life. Not just habits, not just routines, but ecosystems that support your biology without you having to think about it. So today, look around. What in your space is sending stress signals? Even subtly, what could be softened, removed, reorganized, ritualized? Because every change you make externally gives your body back a little more safety, a little more bandwidth, a little more energy to be yourself. You don't need to change who you are. You just need to change the context you operate in. That's not weakness. That's bioalignment. Let's keep going. Lesson 9. Feel to know, mastering interoception, the forgotten intelligence. You've been taught to look outside for answers. When something feels wrong, you Google. You ask a coach, a doctor, an app. You grab a supplement. Try a new habit. Look for a fix out there. But what if the most reliable signal, the clearest compass you have, is inside you? Not a thought, not a belief, not an intuition, even, but a felt sense of what's true, safe, misaligned, or missing in your own biology. That sense is called interoception, and it may be the most important intelligence you were never taught to trust. This is Lesson 9, and it's about learning to feel again from the inside out. Let's define it. Interoception is your nervous system's ability to detect internal signals: hunger, thirst, fullness, heartbeat, breath pattern, temperature, pain, emotional arousal, fatigue, hormonal shifts. It's how your body says, something's off, I need something, I'm ready, I'm overwhelmed. And when you can feel those signals early, before they become symptoms, you become proactive, not reactive. But here's the problem. Modern life teaches us to mute those signals. We eat past fullness. We sleep when we crash, not when we're tired. We ignore tension until it's pain. We override burnout with caffeine. We treat emotions like distractions. Over time, we lose the ability to feel ourselves clearly. This is called interoceptive blunting, and it's more common than you think. It's why some people can't tell if they're hungry or anxious. It's why others train through injury and don't feel it until it's too late. It's why burnout seems to sneak up on us. But it didn't sneak. We just weren't listening. Rob Wilson teaches that rebuilding this inner listening is not optional. It's foundational. Because if you can't feel it, you can't fix it. You can't optimize something you don't perceive. So how do we restore this inner sense? It starts with slowing down enough to sense. You can't feel internal data if your attention is constantly external. Screens, tasks, noise, urgency. You need pockets of stillness, where signal can rise above the noise. Try this practice once a day. Sit quietly for 3 minutes. Close your eyes. Ask, what am I feeling in my gut, my heart, my throat? Don't name emotions. Just sense pressure, temperature, vibration, pulsing, spaciousness. Then match it to breath. Is breath deep or shallow? Easy or forced? That's your first layer of interoception, raw physical feedback. Now go deeper. Ask, where am I holding tension that I didn't realize? What am I resisting? What part of me wants to move, rest, express, or shift? This is body-led awareness. And it leads to body-led decisions. The more you do this, the more precise you become. You'll begin to know when your motivation is actually anxiety, when your anger is actually fear, when your fatigue is actually overstimulation, when your hunger is actually emotional leakage. And in those moments, you gain real agency because you're no longer reacting to vague discomfort. You're responding to real signals. This is what Rob means when he says, interoception turns confusion into clarity. Let's zoom out. Think of your body like a complex instrument. If you can't hear it clearly, you can't tune it. If you only listen when it screams, you're always behind the curve. But if you check in daily, like tuning a guitar, you catch the changes before they become problems. That's interoceptive intelligence. And it's not just about avoiding breakdowns. It's about building depth. Depth in training, sensing subtle form collapse. Depth in rest, noticing when stillness becomes stagnation. Depth in relationships, feeling boundaries before they're crossed. Depth in creativity, sensing when you're forcing versus flowing. It all comes from inside. So today, ask yourself, what have I been feeling that I've been ignoring? What does my body already know that my mind hasn't caught up with? What would change if I trusted what I feel? Then practice, because feeling is not weakness. It's navigation. And interoception is your internal compass, pointing you home. Let's keep tuning in. Lesson 10. Ritual is regulation, building anchors that rewire your day. We all want consistency. We want to feel grounded, energized, focused. We want our mornings to set the tone, our evenings to reset the system. We want routines that support us, not trap us. But consistency doesn't come from discipline alone. It comes from ritual, not just what you do, but how you do it and why. This is Lesson 10, and it's about one of Rob Wilson's most impactful teachings. You don't rise to the level of your intention. You fall to the level of your nervous system rituals. That truth hits different, doesn't it? Because you've probably tried to change your life before. Wrote the goals, built the to-do lists, made the plans. But if your nervous system didn't feel safe, supported, regulated, eventually the structure collapsed. That's not a willpower issue. That's a ritual issue. So let's get clear. A ritual is not just a routine. A routine is something you do. A ritual is something you feel your way into, something that signals your system. We're safe. We're here. This matters. Ritual is regulation. It's how you speak to the body in a language it understands. And when you ritualize key moments of the day, you create nervous system anchors. Let's break it down. Small blue diamond morning. Set the tone. Most people start the day in reactivity. Alarm blaring. Phone lighting up. Social feeds. Notifications. Coffee before breath. That sends one message to your system. The world is urgent. You're behind. Brace yourself. Instead, build a ritual that cues sovereignty. This doesn't need to be a full hour. Even 3 to 5 minutes of presence can change everything. Try a breath practice. 5 slow rounds of inhale 4, exhale 6. Light exposure. 5 minutes of sun on the face. Gentle movement. Cat-cow, spinal rolls, walking barefoot. A mantra or journal line. I'm building clarity before I consume noise. This is how you start your day with agency, not urgency. You're training your nervous system to lead, not chase. Small blue diamond, midday. Pulse and reclaim. Midday is where most people fragment. Too many tabs open. Blood sugar dipping. Emotions rising. You push through lunch. Keep scrolling. Lose touch with your body. This is where micro rituals become powerful. Every 90 to 120 minutes. Pause. One deep sigh, physiological sigh. Stand up. Shake out. Rotate. Swing the arms. Check your breath. Still diaphragmatic, or has it crept into the chest? Ask, am I leading or just reacting? These moments don't just reset. They repattern, teaching your system that regulation is always one breath away. Small blue diamond transitions, ritual over rush, between meetings, after workouts, before meals, entering your home. Most of us rush from one thing to the next, dragging tension from one space into another. But every transition is a portal, and rituals help you step through cleanly. Try Hand washing with full presence. 30 seconds of humming or toning. Pausing at a doorway. Shaking off the last interaction. Saying internally, this next space deserves a new nervous system. These small cues tell your body, the threat is over. You can reset. You're allowed to arrive again. Small blue diamond evening. Land, don't crash. How do you end your day? Most people collapse into screens, fall asleep by accident, or try to biohack sleep while their brain is still spinning. But rest is not just about shutting off. It's about returning. Ritual helps you land. Create a wind-down sequence that's less about tasks, more about tone. Dim the lights. Signal melatonin. Play slow music. Use scent, lavender, cedar, something grounding. Gentle floor stretches. Legs up the wall. 5 breaths of gratitude. What did my body do for me today? Let your system know. The day is done. We did enough. You're allowed to surrender. This deepens recovery. But more than that, it builds trust, because your system begins to expect rhythm. And rhythm becomes regulation. Let's zoom out. The average person is held together by stress and routine. The resilient person is held by ritual and rhythm. Rituals don't have to be perfect. They just have to be felt. And when you build them from the bottom up, based on how your body works, how your nervous system flows, how your environment supports you, they become automatic. That's what Rob means when he says, ritual is how we rehearse regulation. Because when you do small things with intention, they prepare you for big moments with clarity. So here's your invitation today. Choose one moment of the day to ritualize. Make it yours. Make it sacred. Make it feel like an act of self-respect. Because every ritual becomes a vote for who you're becoming. And enough of those votes, they change your nervous system identity. You stop being the person who crashes and start being the person who returns. You stop bracing for your day and start building it. That's not magic. That's micro-repetition with deep intention. That's ritual. That's regulation. That's how longevity begins, not through force, but through presence, anchored in action. Lesson 11. Adaptation is a goal, not just survival, but intelligent repatterning. Your body is not static. It's not a set of fixed traits, not a rigid machine, not a type or a condition or a diagnosis to work around forever. Your body is adaptable. And that's not just motivation, it's biology. From your muscles to your mitochondria, your fascia to your brain, your breath to your mindset. Every part of you is capable of repatterning. If given the right stimulus, in the right state, at the right time. This is Lesson 11, and Rob Wilson describes it best. Your nervous system is not trying to perform. It's trying to adapt. And if you forget that, you'll chase progress at the expense of actual growth. Let's get clear on what this means. What is adaptation, really? Adaptation is your body's way of responding to stress by building back stronger, smarter, and more efficient. Stress is the signal. Rest is the reset. And adaptation is the result. That's the cycle. But most people don't complete the cycle. They either overstress and underrecover, or stay in comfort zones too long, never challenging their systems at all. True adaptation lives in the middle, the sweet spot of safe challenge. It's the signal your nervous system needs to say, we survived this. Now let's build capacity. Why this matters for longevity. You don't age just because of time. You age faster when your range of motion shrinks. Your nervous system stays stuck in fight or flight. You stop exposing yourself to novelty. You lose the ability to adapt to demand. And here's the kicker. Most people stop adapting long before they stop aging. They stop trying new skills. They stop moving in new ways. They stop interrupting predictable stress patterns. They stop surprising their systems. And when that stops, growth stops. So here's Rob's proposition. Make adaptation a goal, not just performance. That means designing your life around inputs that signal we're ready for more. Let's break it down. 1. Micro challenges create macro change. You don't need extreme stress to adapt. In fact, that often creates shutdown. What you need are tiny, consistent doses of safe novelty. Crawl on the ground. Relearn infant motor patterns. Try nasal-only breathing during a walk. Cold water for 30 seconds, not for punishment, but adaptation. Change your grip, stance, or tempo during familiar exercises. Eat with your non-dominant hand. Sit in stillness for 5 minutes. No music, no scrolling. Each one of these is a neurological nudge, not to dominate your system, but to teach it. You're flexible. You're capable. You can handle this. That's how safety grows, through exposure with agency. 2. Stress is a message, not the enemy. We demonize stress. But in the right dose, stress is a stimulus for evolution. It builds muscle, increases HRV, sharpens cognition, enhances breath control. The key is whether your system can return to baseline after. So the question isn't, how do I avoid stress? The question is, how long does it take me to recover? Do I feel stronger afterward, or just depleted? Can I shift states, or am I stuck in survival? If you're stuck, adaptation halts. So you must train not just under stress, but after stress. That means long exhales after hard efforts, grounding rituals post-workout or workday, refueling, not just food, but sensory recovery. Sleep as non-negotiable training time. Only when recovery is complete can growth lock in. 3. Variation is vital. One of the most underused levers in performance longevity is sensory variation. Why? Because sameness shrinks adaptability. Your brain thrives on change, not chaos, but novel stimulus with safety. That's why movement variety matters. Why cold and heat both have value. Why light exposure in the morning and darkness at night cue different states. Why travel expands more than just the mind. So ask yourself, where have I become predictable? Where am I only moving in one plane, training one capacity, eating one texture, thinking one way? Then shift gently, curiously, not because you're broken, but because you're plastic. You were built to adapt. You just need to keep reminding your system what's possible. 4. Identify your adaptive ceiling. Everyone has one. It's that invisible point where stress shifts from productive to punishing. Find yours by noticing. When motivation turns to dread, when soreness turns to injury, when activation turns to anxiety, when rest turns to avoidance, that line is your threshold. Train just under it consistently and it expands. Cross it too often and the system closes. This is what smart athletes do intuitively. It's what long-term performers live by. You're not here to crush yourself. You're here to adapt intelligently. 5. Make adaptation practice, not a peak. Your life doesn't need to be a never-ending highlight reel. You just need to keep showing your system. We're evolving. We're expanding. We're not stuck. That happens through daily cues. A novel breath drill. A 30-minute fast. A new movement sequence. A new environment. A challenging conversation. A downshift in rhythm. When your system says, not today, every one of these is a vote for dynamic biology. And enough votes, that becomes identity. You stop saying, I can't. You start saying, I'm learning. You stop freezing. You start flowing. You stop breaking. You start bending. And that's the ultimate metric of longevity. Not how much you lift, but how fast you adapt. That's what you're training now. That's what this work builds, not just muscles, but movement capacity, emotional flexibility, physiological literacy. So today, ask yourself, where have I stopped growing because I've stopped challenging? What tiny novelty can I bring in safely, intentionally, this week? How can I build a system that celebrates adaptability, not just output? You're not a robot. You're an adaptive organism. And your greatest gift is your capacity to evolve. Let's keep going. Lesson 12. Questions are catalysts, using inquiry to transform behavior at the root. We spend so much time looking for answers. What's the best routine? What should I eat? What's the right protocol? How do I fix this pain, this fatigue, this fog? But the truth is, most answers don't change you. The right questions do, because answers come from other people. But the right questions, they draw something out of you, something you already know, but haven't had language for yet. This is Lesson 12, and it's one of Rob Wilson's most deceptively powerful teachings. Change doesn't begin with action. It begins with the questions you're willing to sit in. Let's unpack that. Why questions matter. Your brain is a pattern-detecting machine. It loves certainty. So when you ask a question, any question, your system goes looking for an answer, even if one doesn't exist yet. That's called the cognitive closing reflex. It's why vague questions create vague lives, and why focused questions build focused growth. So when you ask better questions, you start to reorganize your awareness. You shift what you notice. You invite clarity to emerge from the inside. This isn't self-help theory. This is nervous system training. Because the questions you ask yourself are cues. They shape what you pay attention to, how you interpret sensations, which behaviors feel safe to pursue, and which identities become possible. Let's make it real. Questions as daily practice. Start with your morning check-in. Instead of what do I have to do today, ask, what does my body need to feel safe today? What state am I waking up in, green, yellow, or red? Where do I feel tension, and is that mine or something I picked up? What would excellence look like from nervous system alignment? Then move into movement or training. Instead of how hard can I push, ask, what kind of stress will serve me today? Where am I moving with compensation, not confidence? Is this pain or just new sensation? Am I training my ego or my system? Now go into your workday. Instead of, how much can I get done? Ask, what task would move the needle with clarity? Where am I performing for validation instead of creating from truth? How can I bring my full attention to one thing at a time? And in your relationships, instead of why don't they get it, ask, what emotional climate am I bringing into this room? What part of me is reactive right now, and what does it need? Where can I speak from clarity, not protection? Each one of these questions is a reset button, not because they give you instant answers, but because they bring you back into relationship with your sensations, emotions, and intentions. The 3 levels of transformational questions. Level 1, sensory awareness. These questions bring you into your body. What am I feeling right now? Physically, not conceptually. Where is my breath moving easily, and where is it stuck? What part of my body is trying to speak through tightness or fatigue? Level 2, emotional ownership. These questions turn down defensiveness and turn up self-leadership. What's the emotion under the emotion? What am I making this situation mean? And is that true? What boundary did I cross or let be crossed that's causing this reaction? Level 3, identity evolution. These questions rewire patterns and rewrite your internal narrative. Who do I become when I ignore my nervous system? What identity am I rehearsing today? And is it still serving me? Who am I without the story of being dysregulated, broken, or behind? These are the questions that change trajectories because they give your system permission to evolve. And the beauty is, you don't need to solve them right away. You just need to sit with them. Let them echo. Let them work you. Let them pull new responses out of your body, not just your brain. A practice, the nervous system journal. Rob often recommends using inquiry before reflection. Try this format each night. What did I override today, and what did it cost me? What signal did I catch early, and how did I respond? What story did I repeat about myself, and what would a new story feel like? What part of me needs to be heard without fixing it? What am I learning about my own capacity? You don't need to write perfect answers. The act of asking regularly is what builds the inner scaffolding of transformation, because over time, you stop being someone who reacts. You start becoming someone who reflects, reorients, and rewires. Final thought. If rituals are the bones of nervous system alignment, questions are the breath. They create space. They soften rigidity. They open doors that discipline alone can't touch. So today, stop trying to figure it all out. Instead, ask better questions. Questions that lead you inward. Questions that reveal truth, not just convenience. Questions that aren't afraid of silence. Because sometimes, the most healing thing you can do is pause and ask, what do I know if I'm willing to feel? Let's keep going. Lesson 13. Get a grip, the forgotten metric of strength, safety, and longevity. You can tell a lot about someone by their grip, not just in a handshake, but in how they hold or let go, how they move through challenge, how they stabilize under tension, how they carry, pull, lift, or reach, and more importantly, how long they can do it. This is Lesson 13, and in Rob Wilson's system, it's one of the most surprising and profound truths. Grip strength isn't just about muscles. It's about nervous system access. Let's unpack that. What is grip really telling us? Grip is not just a function of forearm strength. It's a neurological broadcast. Your ability to squeeze, hold, resist, stabilize, all depend on central nervous system output, motor unit recruitment, vagal tone, joint positioning, breath integration. And studies confirm this. Grip strength is a predictor of all-cause mortality, especially in aging populations. Why? Because it reflects functional muscle mass, neural drive, coordination between systems, resilience under load. It's a biomarker, one you can measure in 10 seconds with a simple squeeze test or a dead hang. But it's also more than data. Grip is symbolic. It tells a story about your ability to hold on when needed, your ability to release when safe, your nervous system's confidence in outputting power safely. So when Rob says check your grip, he doesn't just mean physical strength. He means, can your system express force without fear? Why grip fades and what it means. In modern life, grip atrophies fast. We sit, we swipe, we type. We don't hang, climb, carry, twist. We don't engage the environment with tension and feedback. And over time, this creates reduced motor cortex activation, loss of cross-body coordination, decreased tissue elasticity, a weaker, bottom-up signal from the limbs to the brain. You stop trusting your hands, and your system starts bracing elsewhere. Neck tension increases, shoulder function degrades, postural collapse sets in, and subtly, your system stops projecting strength. Grip loss equals output regression, and worse, it signals to the brain, I can't handle stress in the outside world. Grip as a daily diagnostic. Here's where it gets practical. Rob recommends using grip like a nervous system thermometer. On good days, you'll feel confident in hangs, carries, or squeezes. On stress days, you'll feel weak, disconnected, or hesitant. On dysregulated days, your breath and grip will disconnect completely. So test it. Each morning, try a simple dead hang. How long can you hold without strain? A kettlebell farmer's carry. Can you walk, breathe, stay relaxed while under load? A grip dynamometer. What's your baseline output today? Track the trends, not just the numbers. Because when grip strength dips for days in a row, you're likely in a nervous system debt cycle. And when it rebounds, you're recovering. Training grip equals training resilience. The beauty of grip is that it's trainable and it transfers. When you build grip, your posture improves. Your gait stabilizes. Your spine organizes. Your breath becomes more reflexive. Your sense of agency increases. Because strong grip equals strong signal equals strong system. So integrate grip training weekly. Dead hangs with nasal breathing. Heavy carries, farmer, suitcase, rack position. Towel wringing, rope pulling, rope climbing. Sandbag holds, rice bucket drills, or mace work. Isometric squeezes with breath holds. But always match intensity to nervous system readiness. Train grip not to punish, but to repattern confidence under load. Grip as metaphor. Beyond the physiology, there's something deeper. Your grip represents your relationship with control. Do you hold on too tightly to identity, patterns, safety, pain? Do you let go too easily from fear, fatigue, or learned helplessness? Can you modulate grip when needed, release when it's time? This is nervous system wisdom in action. And the only way to develop that wisdom is to practice holding and releasing with awareness. So here's your invitation. Hang from a bar today. Notice your breath, your fatigue, your impulse to drop. Stay 10 seconds longer. Then let go, not from failure, but from choice. You just trained your nervous system, not just your fingers. You built output. You built trust. You built feedback. You got a grip on your system, your state, and your capacity. Let's keep going. Lesson 14. The power of the pause. Training stillness to rewire your system. We're trained to move. Act faster. Decide quicker. Push forward. Solve it. Fix it. Respond. Now. But what if the most powerful thing you could do in a moment of stress wasn't a move at all? Where transformation doesn't start with effort, but with a pause. This is Lesson 14, and Rob Wilson calls this principle one of the deepest forms of nervous system training. Stillness isn't the absence of action. It's the foundation of control. Let's break this open. Why pausing feels hard. Most of us struggle to pause, not because we're lazy, but because we're wired for survival-based reactivity. Your nervous system evolved to respond to threat with speed. See a predator, run. Feel social danger, fawn, fight or freeze. Experience tension, escape it as fast as possible. That response still runs in the background. So when you pause, when you don't react, your system often interprets it as risk. You feel agitated, fidgety, restless, bored, uncertain, and that discomfort, that's not weakness. It's your system learning to sit with non-resolution. And this is the gateway to everything. What a pause really does. Pausing interrupts overreaction, conditioned patterns, nervous system overflow, cognitive spirals, emotional leakage. When you pause, truly pause, something magical happens. You create a space between stimulus and response. And in that space lies choice. This is what Viktor Frankl meant when he said, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose. This space is where regulation begins, where trauma unwinds, where identity shifts, where breath finds rhythm again. And yet, we almost never train it. How to train the pause. Start simple. A practice called micropause training. Trigger awareness. Notice the moment tension rises. An email, a tone of voice, a sharp thought. Pause for 5 seconds. No breath control. No problem solving. Just presence. Notice what sensation shows up first. Where is your breath? What was your first impulse? Can you stay one breath longer? This seems minor, but repeated daily, it reconditions your autonomic reflex loop. You teach your body. We don't have to react. We can feel, choose, and respond. This is emotional maturity at the cellular level. Now expand it. Daily pause rituals. 1. Morning hold. Before your feet hit the ground, pause. Feel your breath. Ask, what do I want to bring into today? 2. Pre-workout pause. Stand still. Breathe. Feel your readiness. Don't let adrenaline choose your intensity. 3. Meal ritual. Pause for 5 breaths before eating. Let your system switch to parasympathetic. This isn't mindfulness. This is digestive optimization. 4. Digital pause. Before unlocking your phone, 1 deep breath. Before sending a text, pause. Ask, is this mine or my trigger talking? 5. Post-day landing. Before bed, sit in stillness. Feel the residue of the day. Don't fix. Don't judge. Just let it settle. Each of these moments trains the same skill. Capacity to feel without fleeing. And that skill, that's what builds trust in your own nervous system. Stillness is a skill. Stillness isn't passive. It's not doing nothing. Stillness is actively regulating your breath, observing the impulse without indulging it, witnessing your story without collapsing into it, holding your center while the nervous system shakes out old patterns. Stillness is holding the frequency of enough. And that is one of the most radical states a nervous system can inhabit. Because if you can pause, you don't need to escape yourself. And that is where real power begins, when to use the pause. During conflict, before replying, breathe, create space, let the charge settle. During craving, pause 90 seconds. Ride the wave, notice what's underneath. During fatigue, pause to ask, do I need movement or stillness? During performance, pause before go time. Tune breath, Feel your readiness. Ground into presence. The more you train this, the more predictable your regulation becomes. You stop being a passenger to triggers. You become a conductor of your own state. That's mastery. Final thought. The pause is not a delay. It's a doorway. It leads to breath. It leads to safety. It leads to sovereignty. So today, find 3 moments to pause. Let your body speak. Let the system reorganize. Let the reactivity dissolve. Not because you're suppressing, but because you're upgrading your reflexes. This is the space where transformation begins. Let's keep going. Lesson 15. Identity is a pattern. Who you are is how you've adapted. Who are you really? Not your name. Not your job. Not your past or your plans. Not what you survived or achieved. But beneath it all, what pattern are you rehearsing? That's the deeper truth of identity. This is Lesson 15, and in Rob Wilson's framework, it's one of the most foundational, liberating insights. Identity isn't fixed. It's a repeated nervous system state. Let's slow that down. You are not a fixed set of traits. You are not locked into who you've always been. You are not defined by your trauma, your habits, or your current limitations. You are what you've rehearsed, over and over, often without realizing it. And that's not philosophy. That's neuroscience. Identity as nervous system memory. Every behavior you repeat, especially under stress, wires your system. Collapse under pressure, that becomes familiar. Avoid confrontation, that becomes safe. Push past capacity, that becomes normal. Ignore your body, that becomes your baseline. Not because it's who you are, but because it's what your nervous system adapted to in order to survive. And over time, those adaptations become identity. You start saying, I'm not confident. I'm not consistent. I always mess this up. I don't know how to slow down. But what you really mean is, my nervous system has learned a pattern that limits me, and I keep feeding it. That's the truth. And here's the power. What's been learned can be unlearned. What's been rehearsed can be rewritten. Identity shaping starts with state. Most people try to change identity with willpower, new habits, new labels, affirmations, but none of that sticks unless your physiology is ready. Because your system can't sustain a new identity if it still feels unsafe. So we flip the script. Instead of asking, who do I want to be? We ask, what nervous system state does that version of me live in? Start there. The identity state loop. Every identity, leader, artist, athlete, grounded parent, calm communicator, has a breath pattern, a posture, a rhythm, a tone of voice, a decision-making cadence, a stress response. So if you want to shift identity, you don't start with motivation. You start with state rehearsal. Ask, how does that version of me breathe when challenged? What do their mornings feel like? How do they land from stress? How do they recover from mistakes? What is their internal tone when alone? Then rehearse those inputs, daily, imperfectly, consciously. This is what Rob calls pattern replacement. Not erasing old wiring, but installing new options. And over time, your system says, this is safe. We can stay here. This is us now. That's identity shift. Real life practice. Morning rehearsal. Pick an identity you're cultivating. Write down, how would they move, breathe, think for the next 30 minutes? Then act it out, not with pressure, but with presence. Midday reset. Notice when you slip into the old identity. Pause. Breathe. Ask, what's the nervous system state I want to return to? Evening integration. Journal. What identity did I mostly live in today? Where did I switch states and why? What helped me stay centered? What does tomorrow's version of me want to feel more often? These aren't affirmations. These are regulatory reflections. You are not stuck, you're patterned. This is the reframe most people need. You're not stuck because you're broken. You're stuck because you haven't interrupted the old state long enough for the new one to land. And your system doesn't change because you want it to. It changes because it feels safe to rehearse a new reality. So ask yourself, what identity is being rehearsed in my body right now, not just in my thoughts? Where did that pattern come from? And do I want to keep it? What breath, posture, Rhythm would match a new version of me. And can I live in it for 5 minutes today? That's the practice. That's how biology becomes identity. Not by forcing change, but by building enough regulation to choose again. Lesson 16, walk it out. Locomotion as medicine for the modern mind. You've done it since you were a baby. But somewhere along the way, you stopped treating it with reverence. You started rushing, pacing, dragging your feet, treating walking like transportation, not transformation. But what if I told you that walking is one of the most complete forms of nervous system training ever created? This is lesson 16, and in Rob Wilson's system, walking isn't a side note. Walking is your original rhythm. It restores the brain. It regulates the system. It integrates the world. Let's walk deeper. Why walking is a neurological miracle. Walking looks simple, but it's actually one of the most complex things your brain does. Each step requires cross-body coordination, vestibular balance, spatial awareness, joint sequencing, facial glide, breath synchronization, emotional grounding. It's a full body reset every time your heel hits the ground. It engages the prefrontal cortex, decision-making, the cerebellum balance, the brainstem, survival regulation, and the limbic system, emotion processing. No screen, no app, no coaching needed. Just walking. That's how powerful it is. What happens when you walk consciously? When you walk with presence, your body begins to downregulate sympathetic activity, normalize vagal tone, reintegrate left-right brain communication, normalize spinal rhythms, regulate breath without conscious control. You don't have to try to relax. You just need to move at the right rhythm. And here's what's beautiful. The rhythm of walking, around 110 to 120 steps per minute, naturally aligns with nervous system regulation. It's as if your body already knew, because it did. Walking and trauma. Walking is also one of the most potent tools for trauma integration. Why? Because trauma often creates freeze, collapse, breath holding, right-left brain disconnection, a loss of forward orientation in space. Walking, especially long, rhythmic, low-stimulus walking, tells the nervous system, we're moving forward. We're not trapped anymore. It's literal and symbolic. It's nervous system repatterning through safe locomotion. This is why indigenous traditions, grieving cultures, and even spiritual pilgrimages often include walking rituals. The body knows. It always has. How to make walking a nervous system practice. Rob Wilson recommends several layers of walking integration. Let's break them down. 1. Silent morning walks. 10 to 20 minutes. No phone, no music. Walk at sunrise or early daylight for circadian rhythm reset. Breathe through the nose. Notice your feet, your breath, your shoulders, your sound. This becomes a daily reset, better than caffeine. 2. Emotional walks. When overwhelmed, angry, stuck, walk first. Don't solve the problem. Just walk until the body catches up. Let the rhythm metabolize the emotion before the brain hijacks it. 3. Decision-making walks. When stuck on a choice, walk with a question. Don't force an answer. Let your nervous system feel clarity before your mind creates it. 4. Integration walks post-workout or stress. After intense effort or conflict, go for a slow 10-minute walk. This allows the system to transition from output restoration. Don't collapse. Reorganize with rhythm. Walking as metaphor. There's something deeply poetic here, because walking mirrors life, one step at a time, alternating pressure and release, leaning forward into the unknown, grounding with each footfall. You can't walk backwards into healing. You can't skip steps. You can only go forward, one regulated stride at a time. So when you feel lost, walk. When you feel stuck, walk. When you don't know what to feel, walk until the body tells you. This is an exercise. This is ancestral regulation, a practice for today. Find 20 minutes. Leave your headphones. Go outside. Set no goal. Just walk. As you move, ask, where do I feel rhythm? Where do I feel resistance? What does my gait say about my state? Then return, not to the same place, but to the same body with new data. Walking doesn't change you in one session, but walk daily with presence. It reorients your entire system. You become someone who moves through the world with rhythm, breath, and clarity under your feet. Let's keep going. Lesson 17. Integration over information. Embodying what you already know. You probably already know more than enough. You've read the books, listened to the podcasts, saved the reels, scanned the research, followed the protocols. You know about sleep, protein, breath work, stress. You know movement is medicine. You know screens mess with your nervous system. You know self-care matters. And yet, you're still tired, still stressed, still falling into the same loops. Why? Because information without integration becomes noise. This is Lesson 17, and in Rob Wilson's framework, it's a sharp reminder. Your nervous system doesn't change through learning. It changes through lived experience, repeated often with safety. Let's sit with that. The myth of just one more insight. We live in a time of hyperaccess. There are more experts, more frameworks, more protocols than ever before. But more knowledge doesn't mean more wisdom. And more input doesn't mean more embodiment. If anything, we're suffering from overwhelmed by optimization. So many options we don't choose. So much advice, we lose trust in ourselves. So many signals, we tune out our own. Information becomes a comfort, not a change agent. It gives us the feeling of control without asking us to do the uncomfortable work of transformation. And that's where most people get stuck. Not because they don't care, but because they haven't learned how to integrate what they already know. What is integration, really? Integration is taking one insight, translating it into action, embedding it into your nervous system, living it, until it becomes part of your identity. It's the difference between, I know I should breathe deeper, versus, I noticed I was in sympathetic mode and reset with 5 exhales. Between, I know sleep matters, versus, I set my evening ritual at 8 p.m. because my nervous system needs consistency. Between, I understand stress affects digestion, versus, I now pause before every meal to shift into parasympathetic. This is applied nervous system intelligence. And it's not sexy. It's not fast. It's not about big breakthroughs. It's about embodying the basics with rhythm, presence, and care. Why integration feels elusive? Because it asks for stillness, repetition, ritual, failure, reflection. It doesn't reward speed. It doesn't celebrate novelty. It celebrates the person who chooses depth over variety. And in a culture of constant input, that's revolutionary. Integration practices from Rob's framework. Here are simple ways to build integration, not just accumulate insight. 1. The weekly anchor practice. Choose one principle per week to rehearse daily, e.g., nasal-only breathing, morning mobility, 3-minute pause ritual. Don't add more. Go deeper. Let the nervous system trust it. 2. The What's Working journal. Each night, ask, what did I embody today? What cue worked for me? What felt better, not just right? Let your system learn by sensing improvement, not chasing metrics. 3. The unlearning list. Write down 3 things you keep learning, but don't live. Ask, why haven't I integrated this? Then choose one to act on for 7 days. This reduces guilt, increases traction. 4. Body-led review sessions. Every Sunday, don't plan goals. Instead, scan your body. Where am I holding tension? What habit relieved that last week? What's one rhythm I want to deepen? This recenters embodiment as the true compass. What if you already know enough? Sit with that. What if more content isn't what you need? What if your breakthrough comes from slowing down, repeating, and trusting your own nervous system signals? That doesn't mean stop learning. It means start integrating. Because the wisest people aren't the ones who know the most. They're the ones who live what they've learned, without drama, doubt, or delay. That's embodiment. That's leadership. That's longevity. So today, delete a few saved posts. Choose one principle. Rehearse it like your nervous system depends on it. Because it does. Let's keep going. Lesson 18. Grief is a gateway, how loss refines a nervous system. Everyone carries grief, not just for death, but for dreams unfulfilled, versions of yourself that didn't survive, relationships that changed you and ended, seasons you didn't get to say goodbye to. And yet, most of us aren't taught how to feel grief. We're taught to suppress it, numb it, explain it away, stay strong, move on, be positive. But here's the truth. Grief is not a problem to solve. It's a process to metabolize. This is Lesson 18, and in Rob Wilson's language, grief is how the nervous system reorganizes after loss. If you skip it, you carry it. Let's slow this down. What is grief, nervously speaking? Grief is not just emotion. It's physiological disintegration, followed by a slow, painful reassembly. It impacts breath patterns, sleep cycles, appetite regulation, immune system function, heart rate variability, neurotransmitter balance. Grief reshapes your system. And the reason it hurts isn't because you're weak. It's because your nervous system is trying to reorient to a new world without what it once held close. That's not pathology. That's adaptation. The cost of unfelt grief. Unfelt grief doesn't disappear. It becomes chronic tension, cynicism, numbness, hypervigilance, fatigue that no supplement can fix. Your system starts bracing, not just against the memory of loss, but against the possibility of feeling it again. So you lose access to joy, trust, creativity, rest, intimacy. Because when you mute grief, you mute everything else it touches. Why grief is necessary for longevity. If you want to age with wisdom, not just time, you need to integrate grief. Not rush it, not narrate it away, not spiritualize it too soon. Just let it move. Because when grief moves, something beautiful happens. You stop bracing. You start breathing. You reclaim space inside your own body that had been frozen. And that space, that's where performance returns, where clarity returns, where you return. Nervous system practices for grief. Rob teaches that grief lives in the heart, diaphragm, and throat. These three areas collapse when grief is stored. So we begin with gentle reopening. 1 breath and sound practice. Sit quietly. Inhale gently through your nose. Exhale with a low hum or sigh. Feel vibration in your chest and throat. Let sound be the release, not words. This reactivates vagal tone and unlocks stored emotion. 2 grief walks. Walk alone. Walk slowly. No phone. No podcast. Let memories rise. Let tears come. Let pace match emotion. When ready, whisper or sing. Let voice return. Walking helps grief exit the body without drama. 3 embodied journaling. Ask, what am I still holding that I never said goodbye to? What am I afraid to feel if I slow down long enough to feel it? What version of me do I miss, and am I ready to let them go? Write without censorship. Burn the pages if needed. Let it be ritual, not record. 4 grief dosing. Grief isn't healed all at once. Set a 15-minute window once a week. Give yourself permission to enter the emotion and then return. Train your system that it's safe to feel without being swallowed. This builds emotional range without collapse. Grief is not a detour, it's the road. So many people try to bypass grief in the name of performance. But real longevity, physical, emotional, spiritual, includes loss metabolized well. Grief gives you depth, compassion, boundaries, honesty, reverence for time and life and breath. It breaks you open, but only so something new can move in. So today ask, what grief am I carrying that I haven't given breath to? What does my body do when I think about letting go? Can I honor the loss without making it my identity? You don't have to grieve alone. You don't have to grieve perfectly. You just have to let the nervous system move the truth through. And when you do, you come back clearer. You come back lighter. You come back more human. Let's move to Lesson 19.